The People's Democratic Party, PDP, has demanded that Delta State Governor Sheriff Oborevwori vacate his seat following his defection to the All Progressives Congress. Acting National Chairman of the PDP, Umar Damagum, made the demand on Tuesday when addressing journalists after a closed-door National Working Committee meeting at the party's National Secretariat in Abuja. Ambassador Damagum said the party has instructed its national legal advisor to initiate proceedings to recover what it describes as the party's stolen mandate in line with the Electoral Act. But contrary to the PDP's position, the Nigerian Constitution does not require governors or their deputies to vacate office upon defection. Joining us on this show to discuss the legal angles to this is Adeyinka Olumide-Fusika, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Welcome to the morning show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, well, let's start with this. I was saying, I think it's this week, or was it last week, that in 1983, a certain governor of Kano State, Abubakar Rimi, fell out with his mentor, Malam Aminu Kano of the PRP. And then he left the PRP and went to the Nigerian People's Party, NPP. And he said, okay, having won an election on the platform of the PDP, he resigned his position. He will later leave the NPP and join other parties, SDP, PDP, and all of that. But at that point, he said, no, I'm leaving. But what we hear these days is that we get reminded of the fact that, well, the Nigerian Constitution, the 1999 Constitution, has no provision for governors to be challenged if they move from one political party to the other. That is a moral question, whereas it's not the same for lawmakers. Section 68, Section 109, and all those provisos, Abegunde versus those State House of Assembly, all of that. Okay, so these governors, is it really true that they can just do as they like? Whether it's conscience, it doesn't matter. Whether it's law, the law does not say anything about them. What do you think?
Well, being a lawyer, I would like to take it from this angle. You do know that it is not the governor alone that moved. He moved with the entire structure, yes. House of Assembly.
They said the whole of.
Yes, House of Assembly members, yes. House of Reps, senators, and so on and so forth. So before we go to the issue of the governor, and we are hearing rumors too that this same thing will happen in some other states. So, you know, it used to be drip, 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 one person moving, and then the court will say, you know, on a few occasions, you know, let's put it that way. So why this gale of defection? This, you know, making it a norm? You know, why this sudden boldness that we can do it and nothing will happen? You see that this development, you know, began to happen, this heavy movement of began to happen after the Supreme Court decision on the Rivers State, where the Supreme Court said there was no proof or something like that, that these people moved. I've seen affidavits deposed by this House of Assembly members saying we have moved from PDP to APC. We have video, you know, recordings all over them, you know. They say so with their mouths. You know, but the Supreme Court said, well, it's only the Speaker, well, in this latest decision, because there are other decisions to the that it is only the Speaker of the House, you know, that can declare a seat vacant. The position is not self-executing, you know. I didn't think that, because every decision of the Supreme Court really is a policy. It's like telling us this is what is acceptable, this is what, you know, how things should be done, you know. And when you have that kind of decision, you are sending a signal out that, you know, you can do it, nothing would happen. I think that's the tragedy of that decision. I didn't think they thought it out, you know. They saw the full ramification of what they were saying. You know, if, for instance, the Speaker is the one defecting, would he go to the House and say, I'm declaring my seat vacant, when we are talking about politicians that lack morals, you know, which is what you have mentioned. Unfortunately, this democratic experience that we have had, you see that it's progressive degeneration. You cannot be comparing what we have now to what, was in 1979, 83. That time, you knew that there were parties. And now that we are talking about what is going on, and if you really look at it, from for instance, you talk about National Assembly members, the way they've been giving themselves perks and all that, I was still relatively young, 79, 83, but we saw.
You are still young. Are you an old man now?
Well, relatively, I said. You won't have senators of the Unity Party of Nigeria, ganging up with senators of the National Party of Nigeria to steal Nigeria's money. They will be shouting and all that. But what do you have since this one started? It's only during election that they become MPP. I've even forgotten the names now, PDP, APC and all that, just to contest. When they get to the National Assembly, do you see any one of them talking and all that? They are all meeting together and, So
in the economic
I don't know why people are saying, we are going to one-party state. We have always been one-party state when it comes to governance, really. It is only when the time comes for election, okay, I want your ticket. If you can't give me your ticket, then I go to another party to contest. Once we get there, even this last election where people say, Labour is a Labour Party, it's going to be different. It's going to be this and that. Immediately these elements got to the National Assembly, they joined the eating. The so-called people representing the Labour Party, they joined the eating. When the party tried to say, you can't do this, they started threatening, to say, no, are you the one here, and so on and so forth. So it's a hopeless situation. Now,
but are you saying, just by way of clarification, that the Supreme Court is part of this problem?
No, I didn't.
That the policy court has made some pronouncements that, some people are exploiting.
I think that the decision, the full ramification of it wasn't, Supreme Court, maybe they were acting in good faith, but they don't know. Even when they give decisions, you see that you bring people, they will say, no, that's not what the Supreme Court decided, is this. They'll start reinterpreting it and all that again. I think that the Supreme Court should be more, when it comes to these political decisions, if they want us to change as a people, they should be very firm in enforcing these provisions of the law. They shouldn't bring politics and all that into it. It's the speaker that will declare that you have left when you go to a commissioner for oath and say, I've left, you swore, you took the Bible or whatever it is you believe in, and say, I've left PDP for APC. If you want a copy of the affidavit, I can forward it to you. They deposed it. And then you start playing, no, it's the speaker that can declare the seat vacant and so on and so forth.
We're saying the same thing, that the Supreme Court is not speaking straight.
Well, I don't know. I wasn't part of that case, so there may be other reasons why they came to that decision. I'm only saying that the Supreme Court, when it comes to this issue, should realize that it's not even on this alone. Any case that gets to the Supreme Court and a decision is being made, it's a policy decision. This is the policy, in this area of the law. That's what it means. But when you say, no, it's the speaker that can't you see them? They are all saying, Akwa Ibom, I hear say it's a airplane or something that's broken down. He wants to join another one, and,
Let's shift our focus to the people. Because the broad understanding, the consensus is that the vote belongs to the party, not to the candidate, because the party is the one that is registered with INEC. The party is supreme in this context. But again, you look at the precedents of Ben Ayade, where I believe the judge Taiwo actually said that some sort of constitutional amendment needs to be made, because it reaffirmed the same case that had happened with Dave Umahi the year previous to that as well, to say that a governor cannot vacate office on the basis of defection. No problem. But if the vote belongs to the people, is there room for some sort of class action lawsuit from the people to say that our mandate has been revoked? What does that look like?
Are you sure the people didn't decamp with them?
I'm just playing devil's advocate. Maybe they didn't. We don't know.
Oh.
Could they have defected with the entire state?
We saw the rally or something. They hold rallies now where you see people saying, yes,
So every citizen of the state decamped?
No, I'm only saying that you shouldn't be too sure that the people didn't become.
What of those who disagree? What of those who disagree?
See, the reason for those decisions, that you mentioned is because, like Dr. Abati mentioned in his introduction, you don't have similar provision as you had with legislators, applicable to governors and, deputy governors or even the president. Remember that, Dr. Abati, remember that there was a time that even, I think, Atiku, was vice president of Nigeria. No, vice president of Nigeria, and he was contesting election to be president under, one party, one contraption by Tinubu, and at that time.
It was a proper party.
Proper political party now.
Well, okay, I will draw the So he was vice president to Obasanjo, or vice president of Nigeria, and Obasanjo was president, and he was contesting under another party, and the thing went to court and all that and so on. So I think it's a moral thing when it comes. Personally, if you have activist judges, like the type we have in those days, the principle laid, the constitution is if Nigerian politicians will not.
In days of Kaudia Shaw, Oputa,
in those days they will simply tell you that principle, that thing about legislators not crossing,
So
represent a constitutional principle.
The people have no power to institute some sort of class action lawsuit to say our mandate has been
What will
breached.
happen if it is instituted is the question. Even where you have the constitution saying a legislator cannot move from one party to another without losing his seat. You have the Supreme Court saying that it is the speaker that has to declare the thing.
But for the governor, it's silent. So can they test it?
It is silent. But what I'm saying
can
is
they
that
test it?
Where we have the law is not being applied. Is it where we don't have any provision that you now go and apply in court?
So what you have just painted is a scenario that a famous Nigerian comedian back in the days, Jaguar, will call yam pepper scatter and shwata yoro, because it's all over. That's what you're saying in very is that we don't have a democracy. Let's just go back home and sleep. Because at first, we've had a lot of lawmakers that did decamp and nothing happened to them. A clear case is Ifeanyi. In fact, the YPP at that point in time said, I think Bishop Amakri, the chairman of the YPP, said, they were going to go to court. I don't know what ended it. Nothing happened. Even in this case of
giving some money to
Oboriwori, no, you don't have proof.
No, I said, okay.
You said he was probably giving some money. He could sue you for that. So you don't have proof.
I withdraw it.
You withdraw that statement.
So,
okay, SCM, you are getting a lecture in defamation.
No, I said I withdraw it.
Yeah. So even with this Oboriwori case, the PDP is saying they are going to go to court. But what you are saying is that they're going to fail there, and nothing is going to happen. It's a case of moral principle. Dr. Abati asked a question earlier on. Is it because we don't have activist judges any longer? Could all of this still go back to the judiciary? Because, see, what we now have in this country is a clear case of fusion of powers. It's no longer separation of powers. The judiciary, the executive, the legislative are all fused together with the executive leading. It's as good as not having democracy when you read the likes of Montesquieu. So how do we get judges that will stand the test of time? That's number one. Number two, how do we correct this anomaly? Because if we don't correct it, it's as good as democracy being over.
I wouldn't, I can only, I'm just an ordinary voter, let me put it that way, but as a professional, I can speak for, I wouldn't want to make that generalization that we don't have judges that, we do have, and like I said, I think maybe on your program or some other program, you have, if you actually do a study, of the decisions that the courts make, you will see that it's not that all the judges are, sleeping facing one side. Yeah. I think that the Supreme Court has to help us as a country. That kind of decision, personally, I don't think it was well, thought out. It's not the first, and it won't be. I hope it won't. I pray that hopefully it will be. Even the current, our current Senate president, the distinguished Senator Akpabio, ordinarily, if the laws of Nigeria were enforced, he wouldn't even have contested to be senator in the first instance. You remember about contesting the presidency, the laws of the parties and all that. I think that when they are interpreting this thing, they bring a lot of sentiment into issues. The only thing that can help us is, since we will not, as a people, voluntarily obey the law, the Supreme Court should just close its eyes and enforce the law. Let the heavens fall. It doesn't matter. Just enforce the law. Why? If the law says this is it, don't go about ifs and buts and all that, and just say that is the law and pronounce it. You will see a change in attitude.
Why I made that point, that maybe we should have activist judges, goes back to what happened a couple of years ago on the floor of the Senate, where a senator, unpushed, unasked, unimpeded, Senator Bukachua did stand up to say that most of these senators here...
He didn't say most, he said some.
Some of these senators here have told me to go talk to my wife on their behalf. Till today, no investigation was done. Even when the investigation was done, they said nothing came out of it. They said he finally rescinded what he said before.
But, just as I've done it.
But nobody made him say that statement. He volunteered that information. So that was why I was making that point about the state of judges in our country.
Not all judges.
Yes.
I'm sure
you only mentioned his wife in that case.
I'm sure Justice Bukachua didn't talk to all the judges in Nigeria. It's just the senators or whatever involved. It was a case of foot in the mouth, kind of a situation, which would also have...
yes. Let me ask you. All of this within the context of electoral reform or constitutional reform, there are persons who have been saying, that, look, we still need to further reform our electoral framework, our justice system. We have been doing this since 1999, but it looks like there's no end to it.
I'm guessing what I was going to say.
So, yes, we've been doing this since 1999, but there's no end to it. Do you think that if we take another look at certain sections of the Constitution, like the subject we're discussing, for example, to change the Constitution and say, well, if a governor moves from one party to the other, he will lose his seat. Do you think that will help? And are there also sections of the Electoral Act 2010 that we need to look at, either in terms of representation or the conduct of politicians? Because I always say that these politicians, unless they change, or they are made to change, we are not going to make any progress.
It's not the politicians alone. These politicians also didn't drop from the sky. They come from us. They are part of us. They are us, So we are not talking of the politicians alone here.
Okay, so
and when we are talking about reforms upon reforms, you saw me, we conducted the 1999 election with an electoral act. It was a different one. Well, the so-called amended one that we used in 2003, another one in 2007, another one in 2011, and so on and so forth. The next one, I'm sure they've done some form of additions and subtractions again after the last election. So we are probably going to use another one in the next election. It's not about the law, it's about us, And this is where the courts come in. Let me give you a basic example. If when you notice that this is a pattern, the way these people behave, a basic one, it's only in the Constitution of Nigeria that you have a provision that says when a judge gives judgment, he should release a copy, maybe within 7 days. I can't remember whether 7 days or 14 days.
No, they do it the same day.
No. What I'm saying is that you can have something as ridiculous as that in the Constitution of a country. That when you give judgment, you must release a copy, certified true copy of it within so number of days. It was because we were trying to address a problem where a judge will give a judgment, make pronouncements in courts, they notice that, and you may be asking for it for years, you will not get it. When he wakes up in the morning and I didn't put this. You will go back and add, to it and so on and so forth. Oh, I said this somewhere. I should not have said so. You will go back and cancel it.
Really?
No, I'm saying that was the problem they were trying to address. So you now put it in the constitution and say, you must give it within 7 days. I think it's 7 days. I'm not too sure. Don't let me. It's either 7 days or 14 days, but I believe it's 7 days. You have it in the constitution. As a practitioner, I can tell you that nobody. So still, they don't obey it. And
the electricity problems.
No, when you are pronouncing, when I say they don't, I'm not talking. I'm saying majority. Okay. There are people who, as they are delivering the judgment, they are giving
the computer may break down.
Now, how do you address that kind of problem? If it gets to the Supreme Court, for instance, the Supreme Court should have realized that there was a reason for this provision. Mm-hmm. And simply, did you give the thing within 7 days or not? Just enforce the law. If you didn't do it within the period, when you just say, when you have one or two like that, you'll see people will sit up and begin to do the right thing. When the road safety or whatever started this idea of using seat belts, we are going to arrest you, you know what it was in the past, the norm. People were resisting them. After some time, it has now, you don't need to be told that. People would, So it is the court that has to be firm. That's the way you can build society. People would take advantage if they have the opportunity. There's nothing inherently bad in us as Nigerians. It is when we see that laws, regulations are not being enforced, this person is getting away with it, why do I want to be different? Why shouldn't I also try that? That is the reason why our policy courts should be very, very firm, and they should think twice before they make these policies, before they make this pronouncement. Once they do it, you see that politicians, ordinary Nigerians will begin to realize that this is not acceptable. And that was why I started with the thing. When I said dip, it was like a drip. Now it's a gale. You have 7 states wanting we are going to cross over. All this happens subsequent to the decision of the Supreme Court that made it impossible for people for you to even say, oh, somebody has crossed from one party to the other. I say, no, it's the speaker that has himself crossed. Okay. Will now go and say, I'm no longer a member of parliament. How does that happen?
Thank you. Olumide-Fusika, senior advocate of Nigeria. Reign of impunity at all levels.
Yes.
How do we rescue Nigeria? Thank you very much indeed for joining us.